Here with me now, Morgan Ortagus. The US and the UK, they're trying to confirm reports of a chemical weapons attack in Mariupol. If they use chemical weapons, President Biden has said he will respond in kind. What happens here?
Well, we remember very famously when the Syrians used chemical weapons during that war, during the Obama administration. That was Obama's red line, and that was really a turning point. Obama lost all credibility back then because he said that would be a red line, and he effectively did nothing about it. So what do we know, Stu? We know that Russia is a serial violator of the Chemical Weapons Convention. As far back as 2004, Putin was poisoning the Ukrainian president back then. In 2018, you'll remember this very well. I remember you reporting on this. They poisoned 4 British citizens in the UK on their soil. That resulted in 1 death. And even just a couple years ago in 2020, Navalny, a very famous Russian dissident, he was poisoned. Also, they tried to kill him. They poisoned him in 2020. And then, of course, let's not forget, going full circle back to Syria, Putin has oversaw Assad's use of chemical weapons. He's green-lighted it into effect and enabled it. So this is why it's so confusing to me when I hear people like former President Obama saying, well, this is just not the Putin that I used to know. It's not the same man. Well, what are you talking about? This is the guy who destroyed Chechnya. This is the guy who helped oversee some of the worst human rights abuses, including chemical weapons attacks in Syria. This is the guy that was poisoning heads of states and foreign leaders since 2004. Putin hasn't changed his stripes. We may be naive and we may continue to think Democrat administrations do, that they can recalibrate their relationship with him. But he's the same man that he has been since he came into power since 2003. He has a history of using chemical weapons. He has a history of terror and intimidation whenever he is trying to conduct a campaign.
So what could be our long-term relationship with Russia led by a man like Putin?
I don't think I have anything good to report there. I think what we have to do, everything that we do in this situation has to be calibrated and thought of in the aspect of what is the Chinese Communist Party learning from this, and how are they going to relate those lessons to Taiwan. So what do I mean by that? Since the invasion, since the Biden administration and Europe writ large failed to deter Putin from invading Ukraine, NATO and Europe certainly have been more aligned. They've announced more defense spending. More companies have said they won't be doing business in Russia. But if Putin doesn't remain isolated once this war is finally over, who knows when that will be, by the way. I mean, Putin oversaw a very long, protracted civil war in Syria for years, so almost a decade at this point. So if we go back to business as usual, if companies go back in, if Putin isn't continue to be isolated, if there aren't war crimes investigations, if we don't actually cut off their energy, being dependent on them as the Europeans are for energy. If we just go back to business as usual, the Chinese Communist Party will learn. We're going to face a lot of pressure in the initial months of invading Taiwan, but eventually, the almighty dollar, the almighty, yuan in this case, will be too overwhelming of a force to resist, and we'll go back to business as usual. That's why the coming year is so important.
And that's a very bleak outlook. Morgan Ortagus, thanks so much for being here.